back with the blue and the pen in her hand.
Can he go first?
Go ahead, let me go first. It's fine with me. I always like ladies first.
Yeah, right.
780 Squire Lane. Testified that Parkway or the Turnpike Authority doesn't provide rights of way, but just eyeballing that map, it looks like the pipes go across the Parkway where the cellular site is, where the cellular companies have those big trailers with equipment. They have two pieces of equipment that look like two pieces of trailers that are giant, and they have a right of way. Can you place it there, near their place?
I'm not sure what you're talking about in reference to the cellular sites on the Parkway. All I know is where our pipeline across the Parkway is in township right away on town road. So
You can't put it on the median like the cellular sites have it in the Parkway?
their policy is to not issue easements. I don't know who owns the cellular sites or what I don't know information about that. But I can tell you that their policy is to not issue easements on their property.
Okay, my other question was, in previous testimony, you had proposed to put a noise fence on the berm to reduce the noise heard from the regulator to the residences. Now, it seemed like a perforated fence. Does that need maintenance in the event that there are trees nearby, tree roots nearby, or some debris from trees or leaves? Do you need to maintain that fence in order to keep it the noise quality?
I just want to clarify something. The acoustic fence is going to go behind the berm up to the height of the fence. I know you had said on the berm that it's behind the berm, behind the fencing, and it goes up to the height of the fence. It's the same effect, but I didn't want you to, for the record to be incorrect. Mr. Sanders, did you want to answer that?
Yes, Craig Sanders again. The acoustic fencing will be monitored and will be maintained by my personnel. If there is a damage, if there is any kind of compromise to the system, it will be replaced. We have them in our system today at various locations.
So does it need maintenance?
You mentioned the damage from tree falling or something like
debris.
that. Yeah, from
leaves
trees.
and
Yeah.
needles from pine trees.
Yeah,
Fills up the acoustic fence, and now it's not effective as it was.
No, not necessarily in that fashion. There may be damage to it from, but it's a screen. It's a perforated fence. It's an acoustic fencing, but there leaves, etc., clogging or affecting that. That typically wouldn't happen, but we do maintain the facilities, and our personnel would be there to address any concerns that we have on site. Leaves, etc., are flammable, and we typically do, we want to keep our site clear of any flammables.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You can come up now.
Okay.
Janet Nisi, 7 Country Squire Lane, Holmdel. Will there be periodic noise testing? Let's say this actually gets in. And I know you did a noise study before, but it's possible as the equipment degrades that the noise levels might increase. So will you do periodic noise testing, and what would you do if it increases above the allowable limits?
I can answer that. From an equipment standpoint, over time, if there is any issue with the noise attenuation, that will be addressed. Periodic noise testing is something that we have no problem doing.
But you haven't done it, in general, you don't do that. It was something that we would have to request that you do this on a continual basis.
Well, the design of the station isn't necessarily going to change. The dynamics of the system would not change. And so what we have done in other locations is that we, as we do our annual maintenance, that is something that our personnel can check with the sound meter as well. But typically the equipment isn't going to degrade to the point where you have the sound attenuation not functioning. There could be situations where you have debris in the line or you increase velocities. Those are things that we maintain.
I think it just sounds like equipment can end up having more noise.
Yeah, and we will address that as part of our maintenance
thank you.
procedures.
I have more questions. Just a couple of other sites. This is going to sound silly, but the Holmdel Cemetery, I mean, people are not going to complain about it in there. And they have spots on the road, right near Holmdel Road. So that's, you said Holmdel Cemetery, of course that's out. But to me, it seemed like another possibility to look into.
Mark, I'll let you answer that, but is the Holmdel Cemetery site in a residential zone as well?
Yes, it's residential.
And it's not permitted in that zone?
No, we're not permitted use in there.
This is a perfect area.
Well, it is.
And two more things, quickly. I've been here at a couple of meetings, and maybe I misunderstood, or I thought I heard testimony that was different at a previous meeting than I heard here tonight. One of the previous meetings, we were talking about that this feeder goes from the west, and you were talking about how it went from Marlboro, Manalapan, and it was just going through Holmdel. And there were a lot of concerns here, and all of a sudden now we're hearing, oh yeah, well, primarily it benefits Holmdel, which was not the impression that was left here a couple months ago.
I'm going to let Mr. Sanders answer that, but I believe that very specific point was clarified at another hearing, but I'm going to let Mr. Sanders address that.
I remember hearing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Craig Sanders again. I think the point of confusion is what our feeder lines are running. This station takes off of a feeder line, so the actual gas is fed from the regulator station. The feeder lines are indeed going west to east. However, this is a takeoff that drops the pressure down to feed Holmdel. The feeder lines, in fact, do feed to the east, but that gas is taken off and reduced and fed to the Holmdel customers.
So is that the reason that this map stops where it is? Like, why doesn't it go any further west? I thought that was at our point.
Just real estate. I mean,
It could go west. It's just that you chose to cut it off for the purposes here. Is that correct?
From the map's dimension itself.
Well, that the station could possibly be west of where you're locating it, even though I understand Holmdel Road is the closest. It could be west.
I think there's confusion from my original testimony, where I differentiated between our transmission system and our pump system and our distribution. Our transmission system is where we get gas from the west, from an interstate pipeline supplier, and bring it into our system. So those are the lines that run per. You got them. Go back to exhibit A3.
West, so 520.
It's on.
What exhibit is that?
This is exhibit A3. You'll see on New Springs Road, we have a purple line, right, and only a purple line. And then on Holmdel Road in the remaining corridor, we have a purple line and a yellow line. Okay, the purple lines represent our transmission system, where we take gas from the interstate pipeline suppliers, which are along west of our service territory, along the turnpike corridor. Okay, so we get gas, our gas that supplies our customers from there at transmission, a higher elevated pressure. Okay, bring it into our service territory. Those are the purple lines here. In this case, the purple lines, in all cases, the purple lines feed a lower pressure, which is the yellow orange lines that you see here.
But it could
So,
be.
and the yellow line is the one that directly feeds Holmdel.
Okay, but
Is that any better?
that black line is the boundary.
That's the township boundary. That's all it is. That's just for reference.
And just one more quick thing. The other thing that I also was a little bit confused about, I heard differently, was last session, and I don't have my notes, it had to do with the noise testing. I thought that that you had to do mitigation, that it really didn't completely comply for some reason. You were planning on doing some mitigation, and when you gave your summary, you just basically said everything's in compliance. So I'm confused here.
You're correct. When I gave a summary, I didn't include it because there was testimony, but I'm going to let our expert on sound answer that. But I did say, as it relates to the ambient noise levels at night, I didn't. This is the detail from the testimony the last time, that we do need mitigation for what the board is requesting. But I believe I left out the mitigation during my summary at the beginning because there was 45 minutes of testimony concerning his report, and it was also part of the record. But I think the board is aware, and it sounds like you're aware, that we are proposing a sound wall.
Well, it was just confusing. Also, the fact
I apologize if I confused you.
that are monthly, it's kind of hard to remember what that
Okay,
said.
absolutely.
And it sounded inconsistent to me.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so I've been very lenient with the time for everybody, but I'm having a hard stop at 10:30. So we'll have to continue this at the next hearing, but 9 more minutes worth of questions. Any more people on this side? I'm moving to the other side. You were supposed to be raising your hand first, so I could have picked you.
I want to make sure I wasn't being repetitive. I wanted to hear what other people said.
Okay, come on up, Carol. I like that. You all right?
No. No. Thank you for asking. Could I have your chair? Thank you. I need the mic too. Great, thanks. Oh, that's great being in blue. Okay. First of all, Mr. Chairman, thank you for considering, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Thank you for considering to continue this hearing. Because, I mean, how many professionals have you had testify?
5.
5 professionals. How long did each one take? At least an hour?
I don't know.
But about, guess.
No, I actually wouldn't estimate right now because I don't know if the HRA.
But we've had-
I know, for instance, last week we were probably 30 minutes of direct testimony from Mr. Potento.
Well, we've had 4 hearings on this, right?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I really want to thank you for continuing this hearing because with all the testimony and the very complicated technical issues that we're all trying to understand, obviously, there's going to be a lot of complicated and technical answers to the questions that the public has to ask. One of the things I wanted to ask you, put on the record here, is the landscape architect. He said that plantings, is he around?
Yeah. He's here?
Okay. Where is he?
Do you have a question for him?
Yes.
Absolutely. Mr. Wiener.
Hi. You've done this for other plants, right?
Yes.
Okay. Have you done them for the 3-stack plants, similar to this?
No.
No.
Okay. And how many, with the emissions that come out, from what I understand, like when I link up, a lot of the plantings have died over the years from the emissions from the stacks.
Mr. Wiener isn't responsible for the Linkoff facility.
No, but it's landscape architect. That's what you know about the longevity of the plantings. And
The facilities that we designed in the plants, Thames River and Freehold, have not seen any issues with the plants.
so you haven't had to replace them. Okay. Now, also, I think the first hearing and the second hearing, there were questions regarding the components from the emissions for stacks. And I still don't know exactly what the composition of those components are. Is anybody here to answer that?
Mr. Sanders is here, but there was testimony, repeated testimony, and question and answer on that very issue in both March and in May. But if the board would like Mr. Sanders to answer that again, he can, or I could direct you to the record. It's at the board's discretion.
I would like to hear it again because I don't think it was clear from the previous discussion. I don't think. I was going to say phone. I don't think it was clear at previous hearings exactly what particular components of the missions were. And I had some questions on that. So I would like to be able to ask that now.
Carol, there's 5 minutes left. It doesn't matter whether we use it this 5 minutes or the next meeting.
All right, we're going to put on the record, maybe somebody else is ready to speak, and advise the board that I'd like to be able to ask that next
Okay,
hearing.
so
Okay?
Nancy, put that down. That'll be the first thing we address the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody, I'll jump on this side now. That young lady with the black that has her hand raised, come back.
Jay, you're gonna have to get a wig.
Hi, Falguni Patel, 2 Hopbrook Lane. My property line is 50 feet from this. So my first question is actually, when was the last time there was a gas outage?
In general,
Yes.
in our company, we have outages of various levels. Could be small outages every month or so.
And how many homes are affected?
Maybe a handful.
When was the last catastrophe, as you guys are saying you want to prevent?
Sandy.
And so how many outages were there?
30,000 customers.
What's the proposed cost of this if it goes through?
I don't know that that's relevant to this proceeding.
Or the time frame of construction? That would be relevant?
That's something we can certainly answer.
Time frame, not price.
Yeah, time frame, once approvals are received and all permits are received, should be about 2 months.
2 months in good condition.
Yeah, 2 months in any condition, including landscaping and all the berms and all that, yes.
So you keep saying that this is going to benefit Holmdel, but you keep mentioning that the solar panels are an industrial site. I think such a large tower is really going to industrialize our town. I feel like it's going to decrease our property value. So how does it really help us?
Just to clarify, this isn't an industrial site. It's located in a zone called the OL2 zone that permits public utilities as a conditional use.
I
Just to
understand
clarify
that. Yeah, I understand that since this is the largest such plant ever in New Jersey. With the 3 towers, you said it's not been built anywhere else in Jersey.
Craig Sanders again. I think this technology that we have here, this is in no way the largest station that we have in operation. This particular heater is the only one that we have of 3-stack variety. So we have significantly larger stations than this.
Okay. And the last thing I want to ask is, you mentioned in a previous hearing that if a fire occurred, which we all are very concerned about because it's so close to the street, you would just have to wait until it burns out. So then what difference does it make if it's 1,800 feet in? Because you mentioned earlier today, it'd be difficult for a fire truck to get in from a narrow driveway and whatnot.
Okay, I'm not sure how to really answer this. But in my previous testimony, someone gave a hypothetical that if a truck bypassed all of our safety measures and crashed into our regulator piping, what would occur? It was hypothetical. I mentioned that if we did have a fire that took place because of a ignition, there wouldn't be an explosion because it's open air. There's certain percentages that gas has to be in order to ignite. The subtle point here is that we wouldn't have to wait until it burned out. It's something that we prefer as a safety condition, is that once you shut off natural gas, as an industry, we prefer to have control of the actual fire. What happens is that when you have gas that's not controlled, meaning not in combustion, it's difficult to manage because it's lighter than air. And so I just mentioned as a hypothetical that if we do shut a system in, it's a lot safer for us to allow the product to burn itself off. Not that we wouldn't be able to put it out. It's just preferred to that. It's a preferred method that we use to isolate the system because a normal fire truck doesn't have dry chemical systems. It's a little subtlety, but most fire departments treat home fires and things like that. Natural gas fire, you need certain chemicals. So unless we have dry chemicals, you really would not extinguish that fire. Foam or Purple K or other technologies we use to extinguish natural gas fires.
Okay, so that is very close. So if a fire did occur there, there's a good probability that the vector of this wind, if it's facing my house, the fire will affect my home. There's a whole bunch of decidual trees along the way, so depending on the season and whatnot, fire can technically spread through the trees, across the street, through the homes. I think that's
Okay.
Did she move any answer?
Yeah, you
I don't know if that was a question or just a comment that she was leaving. I mean, if it's a question you can answer, go ahead.
I didn't hear the question.
I don't think there was a question there, right?
I think it was just a comment about fire and safety.
Okay. All right, so we allow 2.5 hours for this public hearing. I will duplicate the conditions on September 21st. We will leave this as the sole item on the agenda and give you at least 2 hours or 2.5 hours and see where we go to that night. So whoever wasn't addressed tonight as far as questions, I promise you raise your hand at the next meeting because there won't be testimony. We're going right into questions, right?
I
still got a planner left.
I do have the testimony in my planner.
Right, but we're going to continue these questioning because everybody didn't ask their questions first, and then when they're finished, then we'll do the plan. Because I don't want to, I want to continue.
My only concern with that procedure is that will there be a limitation on the questions during the course of the hearing, or?
What we're going to do is, because this is, before we have any more new testimony, we need to resolve all of the past testimony.
Okay.
So, depending on who's left, I think there might have been about 4 people left to ask questions.
Okay,
So I'm
it's,
not going to have 50 people ask questions.
Okay.
So 4 or 5 people, that's all that I saw left. And then we'll go and we'll hear the planner, and then probably have more questions after that.
Okay.
Until we get to
Chairman,
that.
just for clarification, please. If there are questions of the professionals that weren't asked tonight for the asked that night, it could give rise to more questions. Now, are you going to give everybody just 2 minutes again for the question?
Well, obviously I didn't give everybody 2 minutes tonight.
All right, whatever, well, a limit, so to speak.
Well, Carol, it's everything, I mean, it all depends on what the public's going to do. I can't answer that
So it
question.
stands on its own merit. basically.
She's got, another witness that might take a half an hour or an hour. I don't know. So we're going to have to take the night as we go.
But all the professionals will be here to answer questions, so right?
Yes, you can answer that. Will Nancy, will everybody still be here next week?
if the board is asking that all our professionals be here,
Unfortunately, we're going to need them due to the completion of questions tonight.
I guess my only request respectfully would be that the questions that are asked and we're required to answer, which we're happy to do, be non-repetitive questions.
I'm going to have to cut some of them off because if people are missing hearings and they don't know what happened, then that's up to them to go and catch up. You're
We're
right.
perfectly happy to answer questions that haven't been asked and answered in the past. We want to give every opportunity to do that. That has been going on in the past hearings, so.
But if there are people that didn't come to this meeting and all of a sudden they start asking questions next time, I understand I'll have to cut them off.
And those people are perfectly able and have every right to go to the zoning board office and
Well,
review
see
the
Loretta.
CDs of the prior hearings.
Anybody can go up and see Loretta and hear whatever the meeting that they missed. That's correct.
Absolutely, I appreciate
It's
that.
all public record. Okay.
Thank you.
So,
Got a question?
the meeting will be carried to September 21st, sole item on the agenda. Loretta, please do not add anybody else on.
Could we get a PDFs of the exhibits, because I can't photograph this across the room, and I know I can't read it from back here, and there's a lot of detail that I
It's
can...
all upstairs in the records.
I understand, but if it's a PDF provide, I can make it available to all the members that access my website.
No, I would just suggest that all of that information is available at the zoning board
That's
office.
correct, that's what I said.
Along with the
It's all
CDs.
available on the zoning board office. Okay, so again, repeating, September 21st, no other notice other than what we just said tonight. We have one more item that we have to cover, so everybody please exit the room and discuss whatever you want outside. Thank you.
Your website is what?